Good evening. Welcome to the August 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. In case you were wondering, yes, it is already August. That was really quick. All right, I will call this meeting to order, and we will stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up tonight, item 3 actually on the agenda is Proclamations and Presentations. We have a proclamation in recognition of Lemonade Day. I think Emily Alexander from the Chamber of Commerce is with us online. Is that you, Emily? Maybe not. There she is. All right, well, I'll go ahead and read this presentation, or read the proclamation, and then Emily, you can tell us a little bit more about Lemonade Day. Whereas Lemonade Day is good for kids, good for business, and good for Stillwater, the Stillwater Chamber of Commerce, Startup Stillwater, Simmons Bank, and Stillwater Medical Center, along with many other companies and organizations, are joining forces to bring this entrepreneurial program to Stillwater. And whereas Lemonade Day provides youth with free materials and support thanks to our local sponsors. The local entrepreneurs who participate in the program earn money and are taught to spend a little, save a little, and share a little, donating a portion of their profits to any local charity of their choice. And whereas Lemonade Day is a day of learning and celebrating Stillwater's future, on August 22nd, 2020, every citizen has a job, either buying or helping children sell lemonade. The citizens of Stillwater are encouraged to simply purchase a cup of lemonade from one of the youth participating in the program to demonstrate how our community cares for their future. And whereas the City of Stillwater salutes and commends the sponsors, organizers, and participants of this program and extends best wishes for a successful and rewarding observance. Now, therefore, I, William Joyce, Mayor of the City of Stillwater, hereby proclaim August 22nd, 2020 as Lemonade Day in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm in my sorority room here at Kappa Delta, but I'm so excited to talk about Lemonade Day 2020. So as you know, we had previously decided that we were going to do it on May 2nd, but due to COVID, we were unable to do it safely with protecting the kids and also the community. And so after a lot of thinking and a lot of planning, we decided to do drive-through Lemonade Day on August 22nd, 2020. So this is an experience where the kids are going to be following the city's guidelines and the CDC's guidelines. So they have sheets that tell them exactly what they need to do to follow just the safety and health guidelines for food service restaurants and businesses here in Stillwater. So they'll get the chance to have the community run through their little drive-through. They'll have their stand. We have taste testing day this Saturday, but it's just a great opportunity for the kids to learn as business people to adapt and to be innovative. This is such an important thing, as we all know. So I'm so excited for this experience for them and can't wait to see what happens on August 22nd. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. Thank you for being here and for giving us the update. I'm glad to hear you guys have got the procedures in place for safety and everything during this time. And we appreciate all the sponsors and the Chamber of Commerce for putting this together. This is a great event for the community.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll make sure you get your proclamation. I'll bring it by the chamber one of these days. Have a good
Sounds
evening.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item 4 on the consent docket. We have special meeting minutes and a budget amendment reflecting revenue from the Stillwater Trail Riders and the expenditure of a lease payment to Oklahoma State University. Councilors, is there a question or motions on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Patty, can you please call the roll?
Mayor Joyce.
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti.
Yes.
Councilor Overlay.
Yes.
Councilor Delosky.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, the consent docket is approved. I'm sorry, Patty, I knew you were clerking tonight, but I looked over there and I froze for a second. All right, that takes us to item 7. We don't have anyone signed up for items not scheduled for public hearing, so we'll jump down to item 7, public hearings. First up, item A is receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit to allow medical marijuana dispensary in the commercial general district at property addressed as 116 North Main Street, CC-20-128. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gross.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm Lance Gross, Planning Manager for Community Development. And we just have one specific use permit for you tonight. It's for a medical marijuana dispensary at 116 North Main. The map indicates the location of the proposed application. It's on the west side of Main Street, south of Virginia, and north of Elm. And this is an aerial view looking to the west. The yellow boundary indicates the subject site. Main Street is down here, running north and south, and West Virginia is up here. This is a street view that was taken recently. And you can see the parking is out front here. There's a couple of additional spaces back here behind the building, just offside the alley. Are there any questions for staff?
Councilors, any questions for Lance? At this point, I will open the public hearing. We have one speaker signed up, Mr. McCollum.
Good evening, I'm Jim McCollum. I'm representing the owners of the property. And I live at 712 South Kings. Am I supposed to say that? Okay. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. McCollum. Councilors, any questions for Jim? We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Might be excused?
You are.
Thank you.
And we'll close the public hearing at this point and ask Lance to come tell us what the Planning Commission recommends.
The Planning Commission made a recommendation of approval by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you, sir. Councilors, questions or motion on this item?
Motion to accept Planning Commission recommendation and approve the specific use permit for the property located at 116 North Main Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the specific use permit. Patty, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
No.
Councilor Jaloski,
Yes.
With a vote of 3-1, with Councilor Wedlake voting against, the specific use permit is approved. Item 7B is receive public comment regarding a request from Stillwater Springs Residential Development to consider annexation petition with request with recommended zoning classification for property located at the intersection of East 19th Avenue and South Jardo Road. This was continued from July 20th. And we have a memo from staff on this item that it needs to be further postponed to the September 14 meeting. Is there a motion on that item, Council?
We're just making the motion to postpone.
Yes.
Motion to postpone until September 14th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to postpone item 7B to the September 14, 2020 meeting. Patty, can you please call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councilor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that item is postponed to the September 14, 2020 meeting. That takes us to item 8 under general orders. Item 8A is approved budget amendments reflecting donations to the Stillwater Public Library. Is Stacy on the line?
I am here.
There
Hi.
she is. Hi, Stacy.
Good evening, counselors. I'm Stacy Delano, Library Director of the Stillwater Public Library. Tonight we have 2 budget amendments for you to consider. The first one is for donations received in the last month and include $208.04 in donations designated for specific projects, as well as $70 that were undesignated and will use on discretionary projects. We recommend the approval of the budget amendment so that we are able to expend those funds on the designated and discretionary projects that we have.
Thank you, Stacy. Councilors, questions or motion?
Motion to approve the budget amendment reflecting the following donations to the Stillwater Public Library: $70 in undesignated donations and $208.04 for designated purposes. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes?
Counselor Zanotti,
Yes.
Counselor Wedlight,
Yes.
Counselor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that budget amendment is approved. Item 8B is approve a budget amendment for the Stillwater Public Library reflecting the receipt of grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Oklahoma Historical Society. Tell us about this one, Stacy.
The Stillwater Public Library has received 2 grants. One was for the $15,000 so that we can have a big read event, which is a community-wide reading event over the book Station 11. The funding from the grant will allow us to bring the author here to Stillwater, and fingers crossed that's going to happen live. We are speaking a lot with libraries who did the series for the book during the COVID pandemic, and we're getting recommendations from them on things that we can do should it come to fall that we can't have this large authors event. In addition, we received $8,460 from the Oklahoma Historical Society. Those funds will allow us to hire a strategic consultant who will come and create and help us plan a long-range plan for our special collections and archives, with the longer goal of preparing us to be able to apply for additional greater grants from the Oklahoma Historical Society in the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Stacy. Questions, councilors? Or motions, I suppose?
Motion to approve the budget amendment reflecting the $15,000 and $84.60 grants to the Stillwater Public Library.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this budget amendment. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Counselor Zanotti,
Yes.
Counselor Wedlight,
Yes.
Counselor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that budget amendment is also approved. Thank you, Stacy. Thanks for all the work that you guys are doing at the library.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that takes us to item 8C, approve the proposed fiscal year 20 pavement management projects not to exceed $4.6 million and authorize utilization of a master service agreement as needed in the design of the projects. Mr. Monty Carnes.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We're here tonight to talk about the fiscal year 20 pavement management project. Quick kind of summary. To select projects, several factors we look at primarily is the pavement management inventory that was conducted in 2017 that gives us a rating of all the streets in the community. We also look at coordination with other projects such as utility, private developers, other governmental jurisdictions. We also look at traffic volumes, and then actual inspections basically have roads in particular area deteriorated faster since we had the assessment. This year, our pavement management techniques, we're looking at crack sealing and full depth repair, sometimes called deferred maintenance. Those first two techniques, again, are kind of determined in the field. We put projects together and then do those on a task order basis after we've bid those projects. We're continuing to look at diamond grinding, Portland cement concrete pavements. particularly McElroy Avenue from Perkins Road to Jardot, and Hall of Fame of Washington Street to Duck. You remember fiscal year 19, you approved us putting under drains along McElroy Avenue so we could start drying up that subgrade in preparation for this project on McElroy. We'll have to do some selected panel removals, and we want to make sure the subgrade was dry before we did that. 2-inch mill and overlay, we're looking at Duck Street from 6th to Eskridge, and then Husband from Elm to Hall of Fame. I want to talk particularly about these two projects a little bit more in depth. Previously, the council had instructed us to look at other alternatives for Duck Street to rebuild it. The original concept for Duck Street was to rebuild Duck into a boulevard with adjacent developments picking up a majority of that cost. Would have bike tracks and paths. We did do that study. It was about $11 million to do that. About the time we completed the study is when we started having the budget crisis that we still don't know how long that's going to go. We don't foresee funding for that magnitude of a project. In addition, we think there may be other designs that could accomplish the same thing at less cost. But again, we don't see a significant funding source for that in the next few years. We believe we need to do something with that project. So we're recommending a 2-inch mill and overlay for Duck Street from 6th to Eskridge. Husband, that was part of the project that we have on hold for the bike corridor. The funding for that project did not include the street improvements. We'd always intended for that to come out of pavement management. Regardless of how we proceed with the bike corridor project, we still need to do the work on that street. We're looking at reconstruction of Park Street and Hard Avenue. Those are in the industrial area near Perkins and Airport Roads. We're looking at 7th Avenue from Main Street to Lewis. And then again, Monticello Drive from University Avenue to Walnut, which is probably the worst street we have in town. Those streets in particular have pavement management index ratings of 36 to 59, which are indeed some of the worst that we have. Funding by category, this is in your report: crack sealing, $200,000. Diamond grinding, $777,500. We're doing microsurfacing, 2-inch mill and overlay, full depth repair, reconstruction, engineering and testing, contingency, all that totals $4.6 million. Previously, you've instructed staff to develop key performance indicators as part of our accountability. Our number one KPI in engineering is to maintain the pavement index for street network between 75 and 78. 2017, the study had us overall at 70. That's not easily broken down in that study between arterials, collectors, and locals. We have done that based on our current projects that we have under construction. You see that currently that breaks down to arterials being 77, collectors 74, the locals being 64, overall 68. With completion of this plan, that'll improve the arterials to 82, collectors to 74, and despite spending a significant amount of money on the locals out of this budget, we do not move that needle at all. We barely move the overall to 69. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Marty. Councilors, questions?
So those aggregate scores, Monty, I know they're not easily broken down, but those can kind of be looked at conceptually as kind of an average of what our pavement scores are around town.
That's
kind of
correct.
the idea.
Yeah. And particularly the local network is about 60% of the network. Our collectors about 25%, arterials are 15%. Of course, everybody drives on a local street, but it doesn't get a lot of traffic in front of your house. But about everybody in town drives on the arterials and collectors. And so I don't know.
Yeah, which is also why you can change a fair amount in the local street designation, but it's hard to move that needle because
Exactly.
the majority of our streets are designated local.
And in our next presentation, we'll talk about that a little more in depth.
Monty, on the 2-inch overlay from Hester down that the bike street corridor, that simply it's not moving forward with that project as we had talked about earlier. It truly is just doing the mill overlay to it so that it's a smoother drive, correct?
That's correct. Regardless of whether we do the bike corridor or not, we still need to make those street improvements.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Monty, on the duck part of the project, I know, we'd love to be able to spend $11 million to completely reconstruct duck the way it needs to be done. How far out, if we do this mill and overlay, does that kind of put that bigger project on the shelf for a while, or how does it affect sort of the long-term reconstruction, especially some of the subsurface stuff that needs to happen, drainage and everything?
Yeah, we typically think of a mill and overlay lasting about 6 to 7 years. So, if we're looking at 3 years to recover from this, and then it'd take a couple of years to design and figure out what we're doing. So that'd fit about right for the next cycle of when we would need to do something with that street. One concept we'd want to explore is, do we really need to have 2 lanes in each direction? Could we get by with 1 lane in each direction, curb and gutter with a boulevard? That'd reduce cost substantially. And then, take another look at how wide the active transportation would need to be.
So there's a possibility that we could match the 6th to 12th Street portion of Duck with the 3-lane, the 4 to 3 conversion, and move that up north on Duck as well?
Certainly.
Good. That looks great, by the way. All the work that's going on right now looks great. It's good to see. I keep getting people with positive comments on the Main Street overlay.
Yeah, that did turn out well.
Councilors, other questions on the fiscal year 2020 pavement management budget? How, maybe this isn't a question for you, Monty, but how do we feel about the funding in terms of the half cent? Is that, do we feel good that we're going to get all that money in?
The money that, I'm glad you mentioned that. I should have mentioned this earlier. When we bring a project to you, the reason we call this fiscal year 20 is it's the money we've accumulated in fiscal year 20.
Oh, yeah.
So we have that money in the bank, and it's ready to be authorized. So, and we'll talk a little bit more in the next presentation. We do anticipate funds being less next year, and our proposed project next year will be smaller because of that.
Yes, thank you for reminding me that we just started fiscal year 21. And
Yes.
so this is the money we collected last year, and now we're going to spend it. All right, anything further, councilors? Is there a motion or further questions or a motion on this item? Oh, we'd love to hear that, Monty.
We recommend you approve the fiscal year 20 pavement management project selection. You appropriate a total aggregate cost of $4.6 million from the 260 fund. You authorize staff to utilize the master services agreements for engineering as needed for design services, and yes, and approve the budget amendment to move the funds.
Councilors?
Motion to approve the proposed fiscal year 20 pavement management. with a final aggregate cost of all the projects not to exceed $4.6 million, authorize utilization of the master service agreements as needed in the design of the projects, and approve the attached budget amendment.
Second.
We do have a motion and a second to approve the fiscal year 20 pavement management projects. Patty, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Joyce?
Yes.
Counselor Zanotti?
Yes.
Counselor Wedlake?
Yes?
Counselor Jaloski?
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, those projects are approved. All right, let's jump to 8D, Monty, and talk about the 5-year transportation plan.
So again, this is mainly an information only to update you as to where we are on our rolling 5-year plan. We established this last year to kind of help us project funds and better utilize our engineering staff time. Briefly, when we talk about pavement asset management program, you'll remember this is the normal deterioration of a street over time if you do nothing to it. If we do timely techniques to maintain the pavement, the earlier we begin that, the less cost we spend. This is pavement condition. You can translate that into the dollars it takes to get from this point to this point. If we catch it early, we do things like crack seal or thin surface overlays. Further along, we have to do thicker overlays, and then if we go too long, we have to completely rebuild the street. Again, our techniques are preventive maintenance. This is an example of a microsurface. Sometimes we have to do rehabilitation, which is a mill and an overlay. Come down here to spot repairs, and of course, full depth reconstruction of the entire street. We have added additional techniques that we're looking at for our next 5-year cycle. One of those is the asphalt rejuvenating agent. These we primarily put on an asphalt overlay. Again, the earlier you apply this, the bigger bang you get for the buck, and leads to longer life of the pavement. We think it has the potential to drastically reduce the need for mill and overlay in future years if it works as we hope it does. Give you a cost comparison. The rejuvenating agent's $1.75 a square yard. Microsurface is $2.65. If we mill and overlay, it's $20 a square yard. So the rejuvenating agent would take the place of the microsurfacing, save us about $1 a square yard. In doing that, the nice thing about this is that for relatively small cost, we can see how well this is going to work. If it doesn't work, we really haven't lost anything. We just do the next technique. Another strategy that we're beginning to look at is an overchip overlay. This is a patented process. You can do about a 1/2 inch to 7/8 inch thick overlay, so it's pretty minor. We think this may have some use on local streets. Cost comparison, that's $6.50 a square yard versus just a 1-inch overlay is $15 a square yard. If we diamond grind, that's $12 a square yard. We think this may have a potential, particularly on local streets, to save some money in certain applications. We just don't know enough about it yet, but we do have a project at the airport on one of the taxiways, so that'll give us an opportunity to see how well it works. Diamond grinding, we think, has an opportunity on local streets, but the equipment that we use now for the arterials, and you see on highways, is fairly intrusive for local streets. There are some other techniques where you can do diamond grinding with smaller equipment, and we're investigating those as well. Again, how we selected the projects that were presented to you. Again, the assessment in 2017 is our heaviest influence. Again, the actual deterioration since we've seen those. Traffic volume, again, opportunities to partner with other folks and public input. So give you a few fiscal year 21 highlights. Right now, we're thinking when fiscal year 21, we'd reconstruct Knobloch from 4th to University. Possibly range from 32nd to 6th. Talk a little bit about that in a minute. Microsurface Washington from Hall of Fame to Boomer. Mill and Overlay McElroy from Washington to Boomer. For those familiar with the community, you're going to go, wait a minute, one of those streets is north-south, one's east-west. But remember, Boomer at McElroy begins to curve, angle over to Washington. Surface treatments reflects the rejuvenating agent that I discussed earlier. We may likely have to slide fiscal year 22. Slide Range Road from 21 to 22. That we have a joint agreement with the county. Depending upon how sales tax comes in the year, and we don't expect that to be really great, the county may need another year to get their funds together. If that is the case, then we just swap some 22 projects into 21 and move 21 back. So 22, we want to look at reconstructing 3rd from Stoller to Jardot, Sunrise from Manning to Skyline, Microsurface 7th, 8th, 9th, and Lowry in the downtown area, Mill and Overlay McElroy from Western to McDonald, and Lakeview from Perkins to Jardot. In 23, major reconstruction would be Hall of Fame between Monroe and Washington. This would be a project in conjunction with OSU. They want to rework the intersections at Monroe and also Washington Street. They have some other projects planned in that area, and they need a little time to get some of their funding together as well. We look at diamond grinding again and on Husband from Hartman to Franklin, Miller, Maine to Lowry, Virginia from Lowry to Jardot. Again, Mill and Overlay Western, 32nd to 19th. Jardot from McElroy to Lakeview. For those who drive Western and are concerned about it lasting that long, we have some of those concerns as well. We will take some of the full depth repair monies that you just approved and do some patching in that area out of this year's plan. Fiscal year 24, we're going to start looking at the streets in the south and the east, mainly east of Western, south of Stillwater Creek. There's not a lot of traffic out there, but those streets are starting to need some help. So we look at 22nd from Washington to Husband. We're also looking at Kings from 6th to Sunset. Diamond Grind, Monroe Street, from 6th to University, Stollard from 6th to McElroy, 3rd from Hester to Maine, and then Berry to Stollard. Again, Microsurface Western from 11th to 6th. Some work on Redbud and Hartford and Manning. Mill and Overlay 9th from Washington to Duck. And then 5 years out, again in the south and the east, 24th from Washington to Knobloch, Knobloch 24th to 22nd, Washington from 32nd to 22nd, Mill and Overlay 26th from Western to Maine. We're currently, Development Services is processing 2 fairly large subdivisions east of Western between 26th and 32nd. So we expect some substantial traffic in the future years on 26th. Now to the funding. Of course, funding comes from half-cent sales tax, 10 Typically, we look at 4 million per year. We think it'll be the 3 to 3.5 million next year. Our target is, our 2017 overall PMI was 70. Our target is 75 to 78. I've made the statement before. I've made it several times. I've been advised I need to make it stronger. If we only rebuild the local streets, which is 60% of the network, only the local streets, to a 30-year design at our current funding, that requires 67 years. So at our current funding level, we'll never be able to rebuild all the existing streets. And this does not account for any new streets that come in from subdivisions or annexation. And remind you that when you annex property in, particularly along the section line road, those section line roads are typically substandard and they become our responsibility. It's my belief that our current funding is inadequate to even maintain the PMI of 70. Now, that doesn't mean that staff is just sitting back and saying, woe is me. It's one of the main reasons that we keep looking at new pavement management techniques to see if we can slow that rate of decline and be the best stewards of the money that we can. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Monty. Councilors, any questions?
Monty, do we do anything different now as like new subdivisions and things are built to help ensure that those are being built maybe with more longevity in place?
We are aggressively providing inspection services. We have a very good inspector that looks not only at the street but also the water and sewer. Just like that's the majority of our infrastructure for transportation, that's also true for water and sewer. So we have that individual looking at those strongly. It's more of a challenge than our regular new construction that we do with our funds. Mainly because the developers trying to get those in, they'll have different subs, and trying to keep those subs protecting work that's in place sometimes becomes challenging as well, or the speed at which they move. But yes, we fully understand that in future years we've got to pay, to help us out in future years, we've got to pay a lot of attention to the streets that are going in now and make sure they're the highest quality we can get. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, I was just curious because I don't know if everybody knows, but we inherit those roads as the developers build them out in the development. So we kind of become stewards of those roads, whether they're well built or not. So
that's correct.
Monty, you mentioned that current funding isn't sufficient to maintain the current levels. What kind of funding would be required to both either maintain just where we are or get us to that 75 to 78% target?
Oh, something 2 to 3 times what we have now, somewhere in that neighborhood. One, and we've talked about this before, I think one area would be on local streets at some level of maintenance or reconstruction. We'd ask the adjacent property owners to participate in the cost at some level. Most of the streets in town were paved either with an assessment district or through the development process, where the property owners along the street actually pay for the street itself. So that one concept is that the city would maintain it, but when it comes time to replace it, the property owners would still have to kick in money for that. Other possibilities would be funds out of the general fund or additional sales tax.
Counselors, anything further? I think there's a recommended motion here.
Actually, I don't really think we need a motion.
Okay.
I think this was mainly just keep you apprised of what we're doing. We had some concern about whether or not you needed to approve the split that we discussed in the report, but I think we want to maintain the flexibility and not have that split as a form of a motion.
Okay.
And then again, just like you approved fiscal year 20, every year you'll approve the expenditures.
Sure. Okay. If there's nothing further on that item, we'll jump down to 8E, which is approve a bid recommendation for the 4th Avenue Hester Road project.
This project goes back to fiscal year 18 funds. I believe it's the last project in fiscal year 18. This is to reconstruct 4th Avenue from Washington to Hester and Hester from 6th to 4th. We were ready to move forward with this about a year ago, but then the university expanded the Performing Arts Center to add the music school. We really didn't want to build a new street and then have them doing heavy construction next to it. The university is doing some of the public way improvements they are doing all the public way improvements along 4th Avenue on the north side. And then they're responsible for paving Hester from 4th to University as well. So we've bid those projects. This is both the pavement and the water and sewer line relocations that go along with that. Engineer's estimate was $1.693 million and some change. Lop Construction, who's a local contractor, was the apparent low bidder at about $1.685 million. The next bidder was 1.8. You go on down to the high bidder of about 2.4 million. Lop is the contractor that did the sidewalk and the paths along Western and Hall of Fame and currently doing the work at Main and McElroy. And we were pleased to, one, keep the money local, to recommend them to keep it local, and because of the quality of work that they've done to date. This also covers the SUA report as well. Funding for the project comes actually from three sources. Project area development, apartment development funds. The adjacent apartments that were built were responsible for the additional parking and for 1/2 lane of pavement. We didn't think it made a lot of sense for them to build half, and again, some of those worst streets we have. So we just collected those funds and will now expend them. Reduces how much we're having to spend out of the half-cent fund by $233,000. Also, the half-cent fund's about $1.17 million to spend on that. Out of SUA, it's about $373,000 for water and $74,500 for wastewater. And when we get to SUA, there'll be budget amendments to approve for those expenditures. Any questions?
Councilors? Monty, it seems like around 10%, a little bit more than 10% of this money was collected from the developers of those apartments, which seems low, given, I mean, I guess it's about half this, well, it seems like more than 10% of the project is abutting those apartment complexes.
I think you're correct. The way that that's set up is we collect from the developers what it would cost them to do the project, and because they don't have to competitively bid, because they don't have bonding and insurance requirements, they can do those projects at less cost. And we knew that going in, that we probably weren't going to collect the full value, but if we had had them do half the street and the parking, they would have had to have matched existing profile grades that may not be optimum. And then we would have had to come back and matched a profile grade that isn't going to be smooth. And so for the overall long term, it just made sense that we do it all at once.
Okay. Councilors, anything further on this? Is there a motion, or is there a recommended motion, Monty?
We'd recommend approval of awarding the contract to Lopp Construction Company, and the budget is approved in the report, and authorize the city manager to sign the contract documents.
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the staff's recommendation to award this contract to Lopp Construction, authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents, and approve the attached budget amendments. Patty, can you please call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councilor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that bid recommendation is approved.
Thank you.
Was that an extra vote there from the Jaloski household?
Opie votes yes too.
Item 8F is approve a budget amendment appropriating $45,000 from the capital fund balance as a grant match for the U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development, Administration, Public Works. My goodness, that's a long title. Melissa, why don't you just tell us about it?
Well, Melissa Reams, Deputy City Manager, here before you this evening to ask for your support through resolution for the application of a grant. We've been working with grant consultants, Grant Scribe, and they were able to locate the U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development, Administration, Public Works, and Economic Adjustment Assistance Program funding as a grant opportunity, and it seemed to fit with our airport quite nicely. The airport had two projects already funded to a certain extent, not to the full extent needed, and that was the upgrade to the security system and the replacement and refresh of some airside equipment. And then we added in, to round it out, the rates and charges study. So we had on hand, I think it was $105,000 already for these projects. And by applying for this grant, we hope to double our funding, increase the scope of these projects, and really move them forward. We have identified $45,000 in the fund balance of the Capital Improvement Fund, which is our Fund 105, that we would ask for your approval tonight on the budget amendment to appropriate that money to the grant application. Of course, if we don't get the grant, we'll live within the scope that we had originally established.
And this 45 would go back to the fund balance?
Correct.
Okay. Again, you guys, the airport and the library always coming in with money for us. We appreciate that. Money, I don't know what the problem is over there in transportation. You guys need to start coming up with some grants for us over there. You keep asking for money. All right, counselors. I know.
Motion to approve the budget amendment appropriating $45,000 from the capital fund balance, as a grant match for the U.S. Department of that.
For that very long-winded
Yes.
grant name. We have a motion and a second to approve this budget amendment. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councilor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that budget amendment is approved. Item 8G is approve a memorandum of understanding with the Oklahoma Office of Homeland Security requesting the city of Stillwater to be the federally required municipal sponsor for the fiscal year 2020 Homeland Security Grant Program. Mr. McNichol.
Well, first I feel incumbent to explain that the Oklahoma Office of Homeland Security has a completely different mission than the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Okay. While the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is predominantly a law enforcement agency, the Office of Homeland Security in Oklahoma works to harden targets. And there is an annual grant that they're eligible for which they need a municipal sponsor, and we've been asked to do that this year. We would not directly receive the $954,000 in funding, nor would we have to administer the grant, but the funding goes to 4 statewide programs that includes the Oklahoma Information Fusion Center. It's an information sharing organization for first responders. We have had people on that board. It's a very useful tool to first responders in the state. Their second mission is the Critical Infrastructure Protection Program, used for hardening various schools and other identified critical assets. The Cybersecurity Program, which is for just that, hardening critical cyber assets within the state. And finally, a new mission for them, and that is physical election security to improve physical security at county election sites. And although there's no direct funding that comes to the city of Stillwater, we have been the benefit of this grant several times. Fire department received a hazardous materials trailer and a truck to haul it, and then later more equipment. And the Stillwater Public Schools have been the beneficiary of target hardening assets for local schools. There's really no downside to this. We're just merely saying that we, the city of Stillwater, think that the Office of Homeland Security spends this money well, and that we would be a sponsor of that. Questions?
Councilors, any questions? It's always good to help out the broader cause when we can. Great.
It is.
Is there a motion on this item, councilors?
Motion to approve the MOU with the Oklahoma Office of Homeland Security and authorize the city manager to sign the document.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this memorandum of understanding. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedley,
Yes.
Councilor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that memorandum of understanding is approved. That takes us to item 8H, our COVID-19 update. Not a huge amount of particular information to pass on at this point. I think it's the biggest thing going on right now in Stillwater as relates to COVID-19 would be the reopening of Oklahoma State here starting in the next couple of weeks. Officially, there's folks moving into town and we'll be moving on to campus. We had a release out today from the city that sort of outlined some of the responses that we've been talking about with the campus and the local health departments, the local hospital. We've been discussing, their plans for a long time now, and so I think for most people in town, the questions about what happens when campus opens and if there's more students in town, there will probably be more cases in town. That certainly is what we expect. OSU is testing every person that is moving into on-campus housing, including Greek housing, over the next couple of weeks. So I think that's about 800 tests they're planning to do per day over the next 10 days or so, and for a total of somewhere around 6,000 or 7,000 total tests of people who are students who will be living on campus. And so we can expect to see a fair number of positives from those. OSU does have a plan to deal with potentially having to quarantine students if they test positive. They have space set aside for that. They've also worked closely with the Payne County Health Department to make sure that contact tracing is done and is available for anyone who does test positive as part of their reopening. I think they've done a good job of planning and preparing for how to both safely reopen the school and deal with the continuing spread of COVID-19. I think it's important for all of us to remember that we will see numbers increase in Stillwater over the next couple of weeks. The active case numbers will go up. That's virtually certainty as we get into bringing both more people to town and also testing more people in town. It's also very important that we continue to take all of the measures that we are now taking to reduce the opportunity for spread. So maintaining social distancing, avoiding close contact with others, wearing your face mask when you're in a public setting, cleaning and washing your hands frequently, and all of the other CDC recommendations. I think let's say the most important thing you can do, of course, if you're sick, if you have any kind of symptoms at all, you should not be anywhere near any other people for any reason. If you do test positive, or if you're in close contact with someone test positive, you really need to listen to the county health department's quarantine and isolation rules and make sure that you're not contributing to the spread of that disease to other people. We've also asked, as part of kind of this reintroduction or reopening of school and more folks back in town, we're asking grocery stores and other businesses in town to look at going back to, I know a lot of places we're doing special hours for higher risk populations, whether that's early in the morning or whenever. If you can restrict the use of the store during those times to make sure that we have as much time as possible for higher risk, older people who have underlying conditions to be able to get in and shop safely without having quite as many people around. We would very much appreciate it if stores would look into doing that. So again, I think the information from OSU on their plans, Cowboy Coming Back plan, I think they call it, is on their website. It is extensive. They've put a lot of time and effort into it. I think they've done a good job of trying to cover all the bases. But again, this is an evolving situation that we're going to deal with as we go forward. We will see the active case numbers rise, but we'll continue to look at hospitalizations. We'll continue to look at the stress being created on our local healthcare system when trying to make decisions about our community and any particular rules that need to be in place. We've also been working with local bar owners, especially, and looking at a potential ordinance change that will be heard by the Planning Commission tomorrow night as sort of the first stage to look at allowing for more outdoor seating in bars and restaurants in town to potentially mitigate how much time people are spending inside around others. So our local community of bar owners has been very supportive and helpful, reaching out to find ways that they can contribute to helping keep this thing under control. So we really appreciate that support and appreciate the options that we're looking at this point. So we'll continue to do that, continue to pay attention to those numbers, not just new cases necessarily, but the incidence of hospitalization, the stress on the healthcare system, all those sorts of things as we go forward. But I think it's important for all of us to note that Stillwater is going to be changing quite a bit in the next couple of weeks. We're going to see more people back in town. We're going to see more testing, and we've got to kind of be prepared for how to handle that as we go forward. And we will be keeping a close eye on all those numbers. Only one other thing I would note is just that I did extend, last Friday, extended our emergency declaration, which would have expired at the end of July, now through the end of August. That allows us access to certain resources. It also allows us the flexibility to take the steps we need to take when, if needed. So the current emergency declaration is now extended through August 31st. Councilors, any questions or comments on COVID-19 issues? Mr. McNichol, Mr. Dorman, any additional information? How's our mask ordinance doing?
Anecdotally, I would tell you that it's doing very well. I was out this weekend to a couple of places, and I think compliance at least one large retailer that I was in was at 100%. I didn't see anyone without a mask. I saw no one giving any problems to the employees there. I know there's still a few folks that are resistant, and I think it's had quite a bit to do with the reduction in our case numbers the last few days. So they seem to be trending back up, but again, that could be a function of folks coming back into town. So we've seen quite a few people out in the rotunda waiting to connect utilities. So.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think I've gotten some questions about how much trouble we've had, and I really not aware of any real issues related to the mask ordinance.
Very minimal. We've had a couple of reports. I think 2 reports to the police, and maybe just 1, and the people were gone on arrival. So they had left before the officers got there. So beyond that, other than some complaints from citizens about people who aren't wearing one, it's been relatively quiet, and the hotline has contacts have fallen off quite a bit.
Well, I think that was the goal, and I think we're seeing the goal of the ordinance, which was to increase the incidence of people wearing masks, which I certainly anecdotally would say is the case in my trips around town, with a minimum of stress on the community to get that done. So I think it's working the way we hoped it would work, and I would say the university will be requiring masks on campus for everyone. The school district is requiring masks in most circumstances within the school setting coming up this fall. So we should all, be ready and be prepared for what that's going to look like over the next few months, and hopefully it has a positive impact on our ability to continue operating in a somewhat close to normal fashion as much as we can. I guess the other thing that was announced today by the Alumni Association was that homecoming activities for this year will be postponed until next year. It's disappointing for sure. Homecoming is one of the best things about Stillwater. My 10 years away, homecoming was about the only event I came back for every year. So it is disappointing to see that, but I think it was probably the right decision by the Alumni Association in light of the situation. Those would be very difficult events to handle safely this year. And so we appreciate the Alumni Association in their deliberations. I know it was a tough decision, and it's certainly a tough, all of this has been tough for all of us, but we appreciate them, making the best decision that they could in the circumstances. Anything else? All right, we'll jump down to item 9, resolutions. Resolution 2020-14 is a resolution acknowledging City Council authorization and approval for the submission of an application for federal grant funding to reconstruct the apron, Phase 3 center portion, and complete a master plan update at Stillwater Regional Airport through the FAA AIP grant 3-40-0090-032-2021. Do we need additional comment on this, Melissa? Is this the grant we just spoke of? No, this is an FAA. Oh, this is the separate one. Okay. Oh, there he is. Hey, Paul. Tell us about this resolution.
Good evening. Paul Pregel, Airport Director. What I'm bringing to you tonight is a request for authorization to go forth and make application with the FAA to work on our FY21 grant, which for the biggest part of it, if you all will recall, we've got our apron in a multi-year plan to reconstruct. Currently, we have the north and south aprons under construction. And so the final phase is the center, which will obviously tie the two together. And we have been working with the FAA to make sure that we have the appropriate funds necessary to complete that, as well as to update our master plan. The airport master plan is used pretty regularly when we look at development, or when someone asks, hey, what can go with this spot, or what can be used for this land, et cetera. And generally, these are about a 20-year product. However, our current one was done in 2008. Well before our commercial service, our scheduled commercial service, and we've got some other things going on around the airport. For example, the new Western Road corridor that's slated to go through some of our property, in the new flight center, and some other things. So it's been on our missions in the last year or two to get the FAA to help us pay for a new master plan update. So this year they've also agreed to help us with that. So this resolution would just authorize us to start that process. The application process is actually quite long. From here, we would, if it's approved, we would start going into working with our engineer to start the design phase and all of that. And so in total, the project is estimated to be $5,607,605. As typical with the FAA funds, we get 90% of that funded by the federal government. So that'll be $5,046,845, leaving a 10% share for the city, which is going to be around $560,760. If you'll remember, this current fiscal year, we had money set aside for the South Apron, and then we ended up getting some CARES Act funding, which took care of 100%. So we were able to push that money forward. So we actually already matched set aside for this year. There is some talks preliminarily right now that we could see another 100% year of funding, but those are still, if you've been following the news, are pretty far off. So we won't count those chickens because they're not near hatching, but we're certainly hopeful for that. But we would just ask for your blessing to go forth with this and make our application and start that process. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions, councilors?
I'm excited to see the master plan in the works. I think that'll be an exciting thing to follow and for you guys to kind of latch onto and kind of dream a little bit there at the airport.
Yes, we are too.
Is there a motion on the resolution?
Motion to adopt resolution number CC-2020-14. Do I need to do more than that?
That's good. Did I hear a second?
Okay.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2020-14. Patty, can you please call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councilor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that resolution is adopted. Resolution 9B is the resolution related to the other grant opportunity that we spoke about earlier. This is Resolution 2020-15, a resolution acknowledging City Council authorization and approval for the submission of an application for federal grant funding to upgrade airport security, purchase airside equipment, and complete an airport rate and charge study at Stillwater Regional Airport through the U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration, Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance Program funding opportunity, number PWE AA 2020. I don't know that we need additional discussion on this one. Councilors, is there a motion on the resolution?
Motion to adopt resolution 2020-15.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councilor Jaloski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, that resolution is adopted. That takes us to item 10, ordinances on first read. We have ordinance 3455, an ordinance amending the Stillwater City Code by amending Chapter 41, Utilities, Article 4, Water Service, Division 4, Rates and Charges, Section 41208, Established. Mr. Dorman, you want to tell us about this one?
This is the item that you discussed at your last meeting regarding the differentiation between rural water rates and in-city water rates. And so basically this is the ordinance that makes that distinction. And the changes, as you can see from the markup draft that I've provided for you, is that we've basically taken out the section that makes that distinction. We have left in language that allows the city to have full discretion as to whether or not it wants to serve outside of its corporate boundaries. And so that's still on the books. And with the proviso that if you're under a contractual arrangement or something along those lines, then that's what governs your particular situation, i.e. the corporation, Rural Water Corporation 3 scenario. And then we also deleted subsection C, which actually is addressed in a number of rate resolutions that we have done over the years. So it was no longer necessary to have that in the ordinance.
Councilors, any questions on the ordinance?
Motion to advance ordinance number 3455 to second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance this ordinance to second read. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Abstain.
Councilor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 3-0, with one abstention by Councilor Wedlake, that ordinance will advance to second read. On, let's see, 10B, 10A on second read, ordinance 3454, an ordinance closing the south 2 feet of an existing 20-foot utility easement located on Lot 5, replat of Lot 6, East Ridge, second section, on property addressed as 1112 East Swim Avenue. Councilors.
Motion to adopt ordinance number 3454.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 3454. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councilor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, ordinance 3454 is adopted. Item 11, reports from officers and boards. Mr. Dorman.
Nothing to report tonight, sir.
Mr. McNichol.
No item, sir.
Councilors? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the city council meeting. Patty, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Councilor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councilor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councilor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, the Stillwater City Council meeting is now adjourned. At this time, I will call to order the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting for August 3rd, 2020. On our consent docket, we have minutes and approval of a bid recommendation for the supply of ferric sulfate to the water treatment plant. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Patty, please call the roll.
Chair Joyce,
Yes.
Trustee Zanotti,
Yes.
Trustee Wedlake,
Yes.
Trustee Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, the consent docket is approved. Takes us down to item 5 under general orders. Approve the bid recommendation for the 4th Avenue Hester Road project to lot construction, which we discussed at the city council meeting. Mr. Carnes.
So, Mayor, as you mentioned, this is a continuation of the item in the city council meeting. You approved construction bid to LOP in the amount of $1,682,705.82. You approved an authorization project expenditures of $1,850,980. Of that dollars, we need you to approve the expenditures from SUA for the water line of $373,370 and the sewer lines of $74,510, and approve the budget amendments.
So that's for the SUA tonight. All this approval is the budget amendments for those
Yes, sir.
expenditures.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Monty. Trustees, is there a question or a motion on this item?
Motion to approve staff recommendation. Do I need to get more?
We have a motion and a second to approve the staff's recommendation to adopt these budget amendments. Patty, please call the roll.
Chair Joyce,
Yes.
Trustee Zanotti,
Yes.
Trustee Wedlake,
Yes.
Trustee Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, those budget amendments are adopted. Thank you, Monty. Reports from officers and boards. Mr. Dorman.
Nothing to report, sir.
Mr. McNichol.
One item, sir. There have been a lot of things that have been affected by the pandemic, and one of those, the council was poised to appoint a renewable energy committee about the time that the pandemic hit, and that group has not been appointed, nor have they been able to meet. But we have been in conversations with GRDA about a possible community solar farm, even to the point where we're looking for locations. So I'm excited to tell you that that's going on, and we hope to have a report to you in some months. But our GRDA supplier is very interested in accomplishing some of those same goals. So
Excellent. We should get that committee appointed so they can help us look at that recommendation here in the next few months.
anytime you'd like it on the agenda, sir.
Okay. Appreciate that. Trustees, any further questions or announcements? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Go ahead, Counselor Wedley.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn this SUA meeting. Patty, please call the roll.
Chair Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Zanotti?
Yes.
Trustee Wedlake?
Yes, ma'am.
Trustee Jalowski?
Yes.
With a vote of 4-0, SUA is now adjourned. Thank you all for being here.